neither a borrower nor a lender be. This bit of Shakespeare's wisdom seems to have gone out of the window, as sovereign and corporate bond debts stand at $100 trillion, or almost 100% of world GDP. We've maxed out on our credit card, and surely the time of reckoning is near. Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
As the world observes International Day of Profligacy and saving money, humanity is deep in debt. The International Monetary Fund has projected that global government debt will surpass $100 trillion by the end of the year, posing a significant threat to the world's economy.
Deficits are high and global public debt is very high, rising and risky. Global public debt is projected to go above $100 trillion this year. At the current pace, the global debt to GDP ratio will approach 100% by the end of the decade, rising above the pandemic peak.
The IMF cautioned that sustained increases in debt levels heighten the risk of financial distress and potential crises, particularly if key economies, such as the United States, which is expected to see its budget deficit exceed 6% of GDP this year, fail to manage their fiscal policies effectively.
Inflation rates may be falling, but the higher price level that we all feel in our wallets is here to stay. Families are hurting, people are angry. Advanced economies saw inflation rates at once-in-a-generation highs, and that memory is not going to be erased rapidly.
As several EU countries submit their debt reduction plans to European Commission, the IMF emphasizes the need for global tightening of fiscal policy. It estimates that countries will need to raise taxes or cut spendings by 3 to 4.5% of GDP to stabilize the debt ratios.
Our guest today is Błażej Podgórski. He is from the Department of Finance at Koźmiński University here in Warsaw. Welcome to the programme.
Welcome. Thank you for your invitation.
$100 trillion is the estimated total world debt, which represents almost 100% of world GPT. It's an amazing, huge figure. Have we walked into this figure, or have we engineered this crisis ourselves? How did this figure come about?
I do not say that it's crisis. I say that the modern economy, based on the debt, yes, the idea of the economy is to spend more than our income, yes, and we create a higher gross domestic product, higher growth of the gross domestic product. So the idea is that we borrow money and spending the money, and the whole economy of the world based on it. Yes, most whole of economy, we can say, of our part of the world. So we say US world, yes, US-Canada world, and European world, yes, because the Asian countries have a little different behavior, and also Arabic countries have a little bit different behavior. But the most important countries from perspective of the economy, yes, this is the idea how we evaluate, how we increase our economy.
It's one of the foundations of capitalism historically, isn't it? You borrow either to invest or to spend, and we seem to be spending.
So it depends who you are. If you are a customer, you borrow to spending, but it's not the perfect idea. If you are a company, yes, you borrow to invest the money, and this is the perfect idea. So also the customers and companies could borrow money to invest it, and this is the main idea of the system. But of course, the consumption is also very important, because the whole economy now based on the demand, based on the consumption. So that's also quite important for us.
And what about the factors of the 2008 global financial crisis and the COVID, the borrowing of money to get through the COVID crisis? Are these two major influences, or is this a long-term process since the abandonment of the gold standard in the 1970s?
So I will looking for the even more earlier. I'm going to, based on the after World War II, that all the currencies on the world were based on to US dollars, and US dollars based on the gold. So from the plenty of the years, the US dollars have always covered in silver and the gold. Even that you have in the banknote of US dollar, you have information that it's silver certificate. After 70s, yes, you have information that's Federal Reserve note. So basically this is the information that's only the Federal Reserve print this money and there's no cover in the gold. So that was the time when there was idea of the American government to increase the economy. Of course, that was not a perfect idea, because after that they have a crisis, oil crisis. But after that they discovered the idea of creation based on the economy on the real estate market. A mortgage market, and this was the fundamentals for creating a subprime crisis, because subprime crisis was creation much more money than the bank can borrow and they possess, and much more money there are in the market, and also of course unresponsible debt owners who take the debt. Yes, that's, we should remember about the ninja, no income, no job, no assets. But of course in American economy you can take a debt because the real estate's still increasing.
Is it from what you say about the Western style of borrowing and investing, as contrasted with the Arabic style, the Islamic way of attitude to money, the Asian attitude to money, seems to be more of a cultural.
Yes, it's cultural, but yes, of course. But we have to remember that in our culture circle. Christian, that was also forbidden to take the interest from the capital. Yes, but some of the rich person in Europe put the pressure on the Pope that he changed this law. And of course in Arabic countries that also is option of the borrowing money, but it's a little bit different idea. That's not a borrow exactly money, yes, but you borrow the thing and pay the rent for this different things, apartment, cars, etc. So it's also based on the debt, but not so highly as US economy or European economies.
The US economy is the driver of the Western economy in turn. How is that debt structured? We hear about the massive amounts of Chinese debt buying of US debt bonds.
Of course, the US government borrowed the money, of course, from the main market, for their market, from European and also Asian countries, especially Chinese, because Chinese have a lot of money based on the production, because it's the second economy of the world. Yes, so that's also very important. But also they borrowed money from Japanese, they borrow money from Arabic countries and plenty other countries on the world. They also borrow the money. But of course, the measure of the debt now is from the Chinese market.
One historian referred to this China and US debt borrowing relationship as chimerica. These two countries' economies are so intertwined that war is almost impossible.
I think it's a very hard topic to answer for this question. Of course, I think now all the economies on the world are very, very connected, especially European, American, and Asia's economies. And we have to understand that even any war do not create any value. The war only destroying and create the value that we rebuild. Yes, so it's the question why we start the war. So the war started because of the looking for resources or any other option. So in that case, I do not see any option that they go in this way, but you should talk about with the global politician, not economists, because I'm the economist. From the perspective of the economy, it's pointless.
Yes, but human behavior being what it is, we can always slip into irrational decisions.
Yeah, of course, the human can goes in the irrational decision, but in that case, on the biggest economies, I do not think that it goes in this way. There is not one person make a decision, but the number of the person. Yes, and they know what they're doing.
A couple of things which you mentioned before we got on air. The first thing was about the historic debt crises that we've seen throughout since the Middle Ages.
Yes, of course. That's the idea why the government create the idea of the quantitative easing. The quantitative easing, that's what is also the most important problem of the modern economy, but also the very important driver of the growing of this economy. This is always based from the historical, always there's option to look to decrease the value of the money for example, preparing the coins with the less gold. Yes, what they're doing in the medieval times.
Did to Poland.
Yes, then the idea that you cut the connection between currency with the gold and you printed just more money, empty money for the economy.
And the second interesting thing you mentioned was that this well often used phrase, we borrow from our children. So they're responsible to, or grandchildren I suppose, they're responsible for ultimately paying back the debt that the current
I would say the question is from who we borrow the money. And of course, literally borrow now money from Chinese. Yes, but we borrow this money in the financial instrument which is called bond. For example, 10 years bond, 20 years bond, 30 years bond, 40 years bond on the market. Of course, there is the bonds which are infinity on the Chinese market for the Chinese banks because they do not have enough money. Yes, so if we borrow money for perspective of 10, 20, 30 years, and then we roll over these bonds, so we borrow this money from our children, grandchildren, and next generation. So the world create the today economy based on the borrowing money from the new generation. This is the biggest problem for current economy. The behavior of this new generation Z and Alpha.
That's right. You mentioned
Gen Z and Alpha do not like to spend money. They like experience. And this is problematic for this standard that we increase the economy by spending.
But so when you say that Gen Z doesn't want to spend, or rather spends its money on different areas of life, does that mean that they're less inclined to save, less inclined to think of themselves as actually producing money in the first place?
I would say another way. The reason they wanted to have experience, they spend the money on the experience, but usually cheap experience. They do not need the money, so they do not have a pressure which have, for example, millennials or Gen X. Yes, they want to have a better car, they want to have a better flat, the better apartment, the better place to live, the better clothes. They wanted to have just experience, regular experience. Yes.
Defined as what? Travel, cheap, video games,
fast fashion, anything. So they go to work only for get enough money for those spendings, but they do not have any pressure to get more. So if they can work 2 hours, they goes to work 2 hours. If you talk with any person
is this another Western thing rather than Asian? I mean, the Asians seem to be working like.
Yes, Asian working, but we have to understand the Alpha generation is equal for the whole world. Yes, and the behavior of the spending money will be also equal. So they prefer to spend money on TikTok, Instagram, yes, on other social media, than go to work and earn money, because this is the experience for them. They prefer to buy cheap fashion, yes, fast fashion, than buy something good quality for the high amount of the money. So that's totally deconstruct our economy, because we have a problem with it. They want to have only experience, yes, and our economy based that you want to have something with the good quality, yes, and you always want to have something better. They do not want anything better.
So the connection between making money and spending it isn't very clear.
Yeah. They wanted to make less money.
Spend their parents' money.
And spend also not exactly amount of the money which spending, for example, millennials or Gen X.
What are the implications in the very short term? We understand your point about Generation X, that grandchildren, future generations have to pay this money back at some point. What about the next 5-6 years? How will the world structure this huge burden of debt, do you think?
So I would say that the problem is not about the debt. The problem is what kind of fundamentals we have of the economy. Of course, U.S. economy is a very good fundament because they base on the IT, they base on the metaverse, on the artificial intelligence. Europe economy have a huge problem because we cut with our regular type of the business, like automotive. Yes, and we want to go to Fit for 55 and green energy and green everything, which are not, which we cannot be better than the Chinese and Asian market.
Yes. These are very expensive
exactly.
programs to implement, aren't they?
Yes, so I think that Europe have a problem based on it. Yes, Asian will still producing. They have a quite good fundament. They're thinking not about 10 years. To the future. They think 100 years to the future, how to construct cities and everything. But when we wake up as a European, we can do it. Yes, if we're still sleeping and thinking about the green energy, different caps on the bottles and extra things with the green cars, then our economy will die.
Well, we don't seem to be thinking that way. We seem to be furthering the ideological program of the Green Deal, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but the Green Deal, yes, always is the question how we make the money. The Green Deal don't create the money. It's only the spending of the money. So if our fundament of the economy is spending the money, yes, on some kind of project which are not irrational, so we'll have a problem.
It's a point of ancient wisdom, never spend more than you earn. But Błażej Podgórski, thank you very much for coming onto the programme.
Thank you for your invitation.
Great to have you. And that's it. So join us next time for How We Got Here.